Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Instinct as well as the latest episode of Deception. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can also look in the description down below. I include a time when I talk about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Instinct, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Deception. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Instinct. So in this episode, there's an attack on the train that kind of makes everyone kind of in the city kind of think, kind of a terrorist attack. The FBI gets involved, even the counter-terrorist unit, which that turns into a whole thing, which I'll kind of dive in. It's going to be something I kind of dive into later on and separately. But then, Lizzie and Dylan kind of get put on another case. That other case turns out to be like this one murder, which kind of leads to another murder, and it's just kind of like, okay, something's up here, because it's like, seems like a smaller case, but it turns out actually both cases are connected, because the other murder cases, it involved like places being destroyed, one being a carousel and a hotel room. Now the hotel room, and I appreciate they did, it's something I brought up last episode, like the way Dylan kind of processed everything. I was wondering if it seems like that might be something he might do for the rest of the series, like how he's figuring everything out. It's that kind of like blue filter that's put on. I like that, just kind of like I said, it's his aha or eureka or light bulb moment, essentially. I like how that's like represented. But nevertheless, I figured like the moment he started breaking down like the room being so destroyed and it was such a tactical destruction, and it's like, oh, there's this boy, like a kid's bathrobe. Immediately my brain was like, oh god, this guy was killed because like I thought it was going to be one of those terrible things that like involved him in a child type of situation, and that this person grew up and was seeking revenge. I thought that's what this might have all been about, but it turns out that's not the case at all. It seems that actually these victims were actually collateral damage along with the people on the train, because it seems like this all stems from the killer trying to destroy these particular things. In that particular case, the train, the hotel room, the carousel, they were the main target. These people were casualties. It seems like the main person behind this is Kyle, the dude we ran into early in the episode. I felt like something was a little suspicious when Kyle was like, oh yeah, I ran in to try and help. I was like, something's going to be weird about that. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. There's something just didn't sit right with the whole Kyle situation, just the way he was acting. And it just kind of like, I don't know. Like he wasn't, obviously under the circumstances, it's kind of like, well, obviously, he just saw something, traumatic, he tried to help, and it's a little nerve-wracking. But I'm kind of like, I don't know, man, it seemed like it was a little off, and it kind of makes sense why later on, because it turns out, basically, Kyle's dad committed suicide 28 years ago on his birthday when he was like 7 years old. And basically, Kyle is lashing out and destroying all these particular places that had importance to him on that particular day, not just in general, but that day, which is sad, because probably every year of his life, he just constantly reminded him, oh, my dad died. My dad killed himself on this day, because it's something that, Dylan is talking to him about. He blames himself because it's like, because his dad went and gave him the perfect day, and then his dad killed himself. In fact, his dad killed himself on one of the bridge that Kyle wanted to cross when he was a little kid. And so that probably cemented, it's a very traumatic thing. And over the years, he's just kind of blamed himself. So, like I said, he was just trying to destroy everything that was associated. That's why he went out of his way to try to save the guy at the carousel, because it wasn't meant to be any victims. Like the train situation was because it stopped, and with the whole hotel room, like someone walked in while he was trying to do it, and it's just so it's just kind of a sad situation, and it hits Dylan hard because he wasn't able to save him. It's like, yeah, like Lizzie brings up a good point. He can't be just forgiven for what he did. He hurt a lot of people. But at the same time, Dylan's like, yeah, but it's just because, everything that he went through, being such a young kid, and just all that trauma, it just manifested itself in that shape or form. He just, for all these years, like I said, for like the past 28 years, he's blamed himself for his dad's death, thinking it was all his fault, even when he's being told it wasn't. That was just too much, and he ended up taking his own life in the end. Because the way Lizzie was kind of talking about it, it seems like that was going to be his plan at the beginning, like destroy all that stuff and then ultimately kill himself, kind of like the complete cycle there, like burn all the memories of him and his dad. That's why he left such things like the kid's robe as well as the boy's shoe and stuff like that to symbolize him, and trying to burn and destroy those good memories, so that, I guess, because he blames himself, so he's destroying these memories that he feel like led to his dad's death, essentially. And then he was going to kill himself because it's like, this is, it's my fault. I have to die too, essentially. That's how I'm interpreting it. Like I said, it's actually sad circumstances. Once again, doesn't justify what he did, but you can, from Dylan's perspective, you can see that it was just kind of stuff that manifests itself in such a bad light. And even if Dylan wouldn't be able to, like, obviously he'd still go to jail, but at the very least, maybe he could have gotten some psychological help to kind of better himself, you know, not be torn apart by such guilt. So that was the main part of the episode. Kind of a downer, I do apologize, but kind of going a slightly more happy direction. We end up getting introduced to this dude, Roger, who works with the CIA, and it's like, oh, he knows Dylan. It's like, oh man, he's going to be Dylan's old boss, isn't he? Turns out, no. In fact, he's actually Dylan's dad, Roger. That was interesting. Interesting enough, he's played by the actor who plays Carmine Falcone on Gotham. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Funny because, like, obviously, like, Jasmine, their lieutenant, she plays McGon on Supergirl. So both actors from a DC. I don't know. It's just kind of funny how that whole thing works. Nevertheless, which we kind of finally get a little better understanding of Dylan's problem with his dad, because the way he talks about it is like, well, his mom took care of his dad took care of work, and it just kind of seemed like Dylan really only had himself, you know, hence the, like, kind of focusing so much on a Walkman when he was younger, because it was like, because for Dylan growing up, he feels like anything he ever did was never good enough for his dad, especially because his dad goes as far as saying his work with the NYPD is like, oh, that's such nonsense, because his dad, which is interesting too, would have never guessed that his dad works with the CIA as well. It's like, I didn't know that was a father-son job. That's kind of interesting. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, his dad wants him to come back with the CIA. It's like, you're literally wasting your time doing anything else. He's so condescending. It's like, oh yeah, I bet you, oh, the stuff you told me about Dylan, yeah, he's very contrarian and stuff like that. And it's just like, you know how to nitpick and poke, and it's just like, I don't like people who are like that, nitpicking and poking in that regard, and just kind of tearing your son down. And it's like, now you kind of understand a little bit more of why he doesn't have a relationship. Because it turns out the last time he had a dinner with, when Dylan had a dinner with his dad and Andy, was when he told his dad he was leaving the CIA. So obviously that was a heated conversation all in itself. Then he ends up bringing Lizzie to the dinner as well. Secretly, it's like, oh, I would have a sit down with both my son's partners. And it's just kind of like, huh. I don't know. He kind of seems just one of those people. And it's something that Dylan kind of points out, like, his dad's not very good at showing affection, because it's like, he ends up talking in the book, his dad ends up referencing it's like the whole aspect of like, oh, mom and cancer, and a dad who was loving but yet could be so heartless or something like that. So obviously I think he meant that literally, because I mean, once again, his mom's come up in conversations, but beyond that, we really don't know. He hasn't really talked about her, so I assume, like, because I was thinking, like, with that, like, she might be dead, but then it's like, with that statement, it's like, oh, did she die of cancer or something? So that probably made them drift even further apart, because probably their mom was probably the only thing, like, Dylan's mom was probably the only thing really keeping the family together. And I mean, obviously something went in the right direction, because they ended up working together, but I think his dad was probably always part of the CIA, and it's like, oh, Dylan joined it, because it's like, it's something they had in common, because for him, it's like, Dylan, you have the mind and the skills, you are one of the best at your job, the CIA, come back, you know. So, but for Dylan, you know, and it was something because I thought that's what they were saying in the, like, pilot, but in another episode, I was like, oh, maybe it wasn't, but the whole aspect of like, oh, he did leave the CIA for, Andy, because I feel like there was one episode I kind of like thought the story was kind of saying it wasn't necessarily like that, was kind of mindset, but it's like, nope, which makes that situation even more awkward. Like I said, when you consider the fact is his dad was working with the CIA, he's like, you know, don't quit on me, son, which his dad's kind of calling him a quitter for that and stuff like that, which is like, no, for him, it's like, I enjoyed my time at the CIA, but he does point out, like, yeah, there was some morally gray stuff I didn't really appreciate, which is like, it's CIA, so it seems like that kind of roughly comes with the territory. So what exactly he did, we still don't 100% know yet. That hasn't really been brought up, but nevertheless. But it's kind of interesting. Lizzie did say a line that it is sometimes that, you know, because Dylan feels like he let his dad down, because a lot of the stuff about Kyle feeling like he failed his dad, you know, Dylan kind of resonates with it too, because he feels like he failed his dad the way his dad kind of looked at him and treats him about every little thing. Like again, nothing's good enough, which Lizzie was kind of like, nah, sometimes dads, you know, fail the sons too. So it's like, rather than his dad accepting him for who he is and accepting his life choices, he kind of goes, like, you were chosen for this, which is kind of interesting because his dad basically, it seems like, has a mentality for destiny. It's like, oh, it's your destiny. You were chosen for this. You had the skills. You were made for this. Stop wasting it otherwise. The way he says it almost makes it seem like whether you try it or not, there will eventually be something that ends up bringing you back sooner or later. It's almost like an eventuality. There's even something that Dylan ends up talking with Lizzie about, the fact is that he's actually afraid to ask his dad if his dad's ever read this book, which, he kind of brings it up. I was like, oh yeah, it's coming back in paperback. He's like, well, why would I get one? I mean, I guess if you want me to, I can buy one, but I already got a hard copy. Dylan's kind of happy. He's like, oh my God, he does have it. He's read it. And it's kind of like, yeah, you know what they say. Everyone's got one book in them, which is like, so it's kind of like, yay, and then immediately down because he had to like add in one. It's like I said, it's just like nothing Dylan ever does is good enough. It's like, you could have just stopped and been like, yeah, Baltar, like, you don't have to be an asshole about it. Where maybe to him, it's not being an asshole. Maybe it's just telling the truth. Like, I'm not going to, once again, it's kind of like he's a little cold-hearted in the sense of like, there's still love there, but at the same time, he is like, it seems like he compartmentalizes a lot of stuff, like, very like keeps a lot of the emotional aspect out of it, probably when it came to his relationships, both with his wife as well as with Dylan, and just kind of like a very logical person. I'd kind of chalk it up to kind of like Dylan, but Dylan adds in emotion as well. I don't know, maybe there's more to his dad that, given enough time, we'll kind of get to learn more about. I mean, I do feel like this isn't the last we've seen of his dad. I'm sure he's going to cross paths, especially because he has his CIA buddy that he talks to from time to time and gets help with. So I get feeling like that's going to cross over into some story related to his dad soon enough, but we'll see. I mean, in all, Dylan goes, honestly, things between me and my dad, not as bad as it could have been. The actual kind of not bad. Not good, but not bad. Because even his dad was kind of like, oh, I'm kind of envious of your skills. So it's like, oh, at least in one regard, it does show that his dad does respect him. And go like, you were very skilled. I mean, that respect is why he pushes Dylan. I think it's also because he wants Dylan near him. It's kind of like, at least that, CIA work probably put them in the same building together often. It's like, his son was very good at what he does, essentially. So, it fills him with pride and stuff like that. Maybe he just can't admit it the way he probably should. Probably not very good with his words. And once again, emotions and feelings. But maybe that's just my opinion. Another avenue in this episode was the whole situation with Jasmine and Lizzie, because I love the whole conversation of everyone being like, oh, so check with the lieutenant, like, oh yeah, like Eternal Affair lady Sally was here. It's like, okay, like, it's like, why are you so nervous? Like, I think that should be the bigger question. All three of those guys were like super nervous. Like, have y'all been doing some illegal shit for you to be shitting your britches over IA? But then, to be fair, I guess the way cop shows kind of set it up, they make it go like, man, IA's coming after you for every little thing. So I guess that's kind of the fear. But it's like that. I'm surprised Liz didn't go, are y'all doing some shady shit? Like, I would assume so. The way they were like, so go check it out. Like, none of them wanted to go to the lieutenant. It's like, you go check her out. Lizzie goes. Turns out she's actually getting her wedding dress done. And it's like, oh, Sally from IA is the one planning her wedding, which it completely catches Lizzie off guard. I mean, they're such good friends. Like, I thought I would do it. But obviously, Jasmine's doing, like, not going down that route because it's like, I didn't want to hurt you. You literally had your whole situation with Charlie, and it was going to be your wedding and everything. And I don't want to stare at more problem for Lizzie. It's like, you should at least given me the choice, at least talk to me about it before. And even, later when Dylan explains it to her, like, oh yeah, like, taking Jasmine's side, and at least they're like, oh, she just wanted to save your feelings. It's like, even if you're saying you are moving on, that doesn't mean you have moved on. It doesn't make it easy, And she's like, God, it's so frustrating when you're so smart. And then Dylan's like, I know, like, almost got like, I know it's like a curse and I'm this smart. And she's kind of looking at him, which I really appreciated. I mean, luckily, when it was all said and done, Lizzie was able to kind of see that and understand that, it's like moving on is not the easiest thing. She can kind of say that she is and she's better, but it probably would have been a trigger. It just would have brought up all the memories about the wedding she couldn't have with the man that she loved, and, But she did have that sweet moment of handing over her wedding dress. Well, was she going to give her an entire wedding dress? My understanding was just the veil, but I guess it's like, if she would have liked the dress, would she have given it to her too? Because I feel like, why just give her the veil? The dress would have been wouldn't that just be a waste of the dress too? But I don't know, maybe if she liked it all, maybe the whole point was to give her the dress. But like I said, it just seemed like it was more so the veil, which is just weird to me. It wouldn't clash with the veil she had. And be fair, like, we don't know what the dress looked like that Lizzie originally picked out, because it turns out it wasn't actually there, which is, it's kind of funny in a dark, messed up way, because it's like, oh, because she never opened it, so she never got to see that it wasn't actually the right dress, which is, once again, sad. But, there's some levity to it, because it's like, oh, her and Jasmine had to laugh about it, so. She did say she was going to wear it at a wedding. I hope that is something that at least some point during the show, we do see her wearing that dress. Hopefully my brain doesn't have like a brain fart and totally forget that that's that dress. And when we see it later on, I'm like, oh, that dress is interesting. All right. The show has to explain to me that, oh yeah, that's actually the dress she was referencing in this particular episode, or I completely miss it entirely or something like that. Either way, overall, very interesting episode. A lot of, like I said, the story, it's the main story plot itself, but all these other developments, obviously with Jasmine and Lizzie, as well as Dylan and his whole dad situation. That was rough situation. Like I said, you kind of understand why Dylan's kind of like about his dad, because I'm sure it's going to be one of those situations where it's like you might think someone might be blowing stuff out of proportion, might be exaggerating. It's like, I mean, his dad's not bad in the sense of he's a complete and utter asshole. Like I said, he can be an asshole in the sense that he's condescending and he looks down on everything you do. Granted, it's like he's not like an abusive dad, but it's maybe like he isn't, like I said, emotionally there. But that's my take on it. So very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. Sadly, there won't be an episode next week, but there will be one the week after next. So do keep that in mind. And now moving on to this week's episode of Deception. In this week's episode, it deals with a well-known street artist named Bishop, and it seems like, oh, he always has these messages with a lot of his like murals and the pictures he paints, but it turns out like he's kind of going through a phase of crime, stealing stuff, as well as even going as far as killing people. At least that's what they think at first, because obviously, I'm just going to skip around to it, but we find out that Bishop is King Switch, which interestingly enough is Billy Zane. I was like, Billy Zane! God, so much he's done, but I can't, I was even thinking during the show, I was like, what can I pinpoint Billy Zane for? I think the most recent thing I saw him in was an episode of Legends of Tomorrow. He ran the circus. Was that this season 3, or was that last season? I don't remember. I definitely remember, I had the same reaction. Oh my God, Billy Zane! I feel like that was this season, but I could be totally wrong. But nevertheless, but it's interesting because he'd get other people to kind of like do the murals for him, making the people think, oh, it's Bishop, when in actuality, all while stealing other stuff like a stained glass from a church as well as a watch. And the whole point is like, it's interesting because a lot of stuff is like, Cameron kind of pieces together because it's like a lot of the places he's hit have been places that the mysterious woman or MW has been spotted. Obviously, Kay's not 100% sure because like, no, we don't have any conclusive evidence. Obviously, John, you have Cam telling John anyway, because for Cam, it's like, basically he was talking to John and everything. He's like, oh yeah, Bishop, yeah. And it's like, okay, yeah, it's cool for you to live your life or anything like that. I know you're doing your best to help me get out, but don't kind of rub it in my face. It kind of hit, Cam, because I think from time to time it's like, it's because he feels guilty because he blames himself the reason why John's in the situation that he's in. As his brother, he wasn't there for him. He couldn't help him out of this pickle that basically John's spending every day. And more time that's passing by, the longer John's spending in jail, and he feels like he hasn't accomplished anything subsequently since joining with the FBI. He doesn't think he's doing a good enough job, which him and his team and the FBI are doing the best that they can, but just for him, it's like, he's felt like he's letting his brother down with every moment in the past, because it's like, oh yeah, I'm having fun doing all this stupid stuff, but my brother's suffering. He's locked away, and I'm the only one that can do this, so it's almost like, who am I to have fun? So for him, it is a situation. I'm sure Kay can kind of see it too, because even Deacons was kind of like, are you sure you're not just grasping at straws? Because it's just, you need anything you can latch on to, any hope potentially to make sure that it's like, hey, we're making at least some headway, because they've picked up stuff here and there, but they haven't made any huge advancements in the whole mystery woman Kay. It's like subsequently, since Kay kind of helped him get started on that whole situation. So I did like how a lot of the case was handled. Like that dude, was it Mecca? Like he wouldn't help the FBI, but then like Cameron and them kind of photoshopped a picture of him and made it like look like it was by Bishop and scared him into helping them. Which I'm sure from a police standpoint, that's coercing. That's coercing someone into being a witness and helping you out. So I don't know. I'm sure that skates in the gray area of the law, but nevertheless. So I appreciate Cam dressing up like Mecca at trying to show off in front of the others. I'm obviously, even though he's a great magician, he sucks at street art apparently. So that's kind of incredible, seeing that he did that very terrible drawing. Which, to be fair, I would not be able to do much better. I'm pretty sure Cameron does his, compared to what I'd be able to do. His looks like Picasso's work or something, just to kind of put that in comparison. But I love that, Kay was like, good luck. And literally everyone in the band was like, what are you doing? Even Mike is like, what? I guess it's kind of a bad luck thing to say to a magician when they're about to go on stage or something like that. It's good luck. I guess, I wonder, does it work the same way as with like an actor or something who's going like for a performance? It's like, oh, break a leg. Is that all stage stuff that works like that? I mean, I don't know. I've never known that to be a thing amongst magicians. I've never heard that, but maybe that legitimately is a thing. I don't know. So I just thought that was kind of fascinating, which you would kind of expect, like, I guess, because, Kay knows a little bit about the magic stuff, but she doesn't know a lot. Obviously, like, Mike is like the big magic fan, so even he was like, come on, Kay, you don't do what? But obviously, like, those guys turned out to be parkour guys, and they're all running, and Cam's trying to keep up and everything. It's like, Cam's doing some little stuff here and there, but I'm like, you're not going as, like, hardcore parkour as they are. And even at one point, he's about to miss a jump, and he's struggling to get up, and they're like, you have Jordan being like, oh, yeah, he's not going to make it. And he's like, oh, he's going to fall. And you have Gunter being like, oh, yeah, he's definitely going to fall. And you have Dina being like, shut up. Get off the headsets. Never on the headsets again, you two. And it's like, what kind of douchebags are you? It's like, I get it. I was like it was supposed to be some kind of reverse psychology situation. Maybe that was the point, but it's like, holy crap, your boss could potentially fall to his death, and you're just kind of like, oh man, yeah, he's gonna fall. Oh yeah, he's gonna definitely fall. I'm surprised you can go add some cartoon sound effects. Oh yeah, he's gonna go, splat. Like, I'm surprised they didn't do something like that. It's such a dick thing to do. But I kind of had a feeling about that whole like King Switch situation. Like, I was like, because I thought the story was going to be like, oh, it turns out like Bishop isn't behind all this. Like, either he's being forced in a sense of like there's someone else kind of behind him setting all this up. But the way as the story is progressing, it was getting later in the episode, I'm like, I guess that's not the case. I guess it really is legitimately Bishop. Because that is a question, like, why'd you go from being very like activist, your art having a message behind it, to like doing like this? And it did bring up something that King Switch ended up bringing up, and which obviously we know now is one and the same. It's the fact is that a lot of people would take his art and just sell it. He wouldn't make any money off of it, but that's the more infuriating thing, because there was a message behind it, but all people cared about was the money and just kind of the spectacle of it, rather than what like the messages you should be pulling from it. Which, really quickly, I'll point out the fact is, holy crap, like, John and Cam can really scrap when the time comes for it, because it's like for John and for Cam, he's like, yeah, our dad didn't just teach us how to do magic, he taught us how to survive. And like, Cam seriously kicks some ass, and and I love the cut back and forth between the twins of like John kicking ass and then Cam kicking ass. So I thought that was pretty impressive. But really quickly, kind of breaking it down, it's kind of interesting. But some of the stuff John said, not John, Bishop said about like that kind of being the main reason why he's doing this, but for him it's like, oh, he's found, like, he's seen the light, that basically all the stuff they stole, the stained glass, including the watch, it's for a bigger purpose. We're returning it. Sadly, he got away, which to me is kind of a cool thing, because that means potentially we'll be seeing more of Billy Zane. I get the feeling like he'll be kind of like a recurring antagonist potentially. And obviously, Cameron kind of takes it a little hard, and you have Kay being like, "Oh, come on, take the win. We cracked down on some things about it. It's like Bishop got away. Plus, a lot of stuff is left unanswered why he started going down the route he did. I mean, to be fair, he hasn't murdered anyone, but the fact of the matter is he went out of his way stealing. So at least that shows some honor too. Like, even though he is stealing stuff, he isn't killing people, which it does seem like he is connected to the mystery woman, because there's a painting they ended up finding that was of the two colored eyes. So, two things. We end up finding out that basically the glass and the watch were basically made in the same year, 1913. There's a whole, like, we're returning it. Now, this seems like, and it's something that Cam ends up bringing up to John, that this is bigger than them, what happened to John, because it seems like they're trying to rectify something. Like, there's some activist, magician, illusionist group, it seems like, that they're trying to fix mistakes of the past. Like, maybe it's something like all these particular things are associated with magicians. Maybe this has something to do with magical, like, magicianal families. Because at the beginning, I felt like that's what this had to be all about. Like, why mystery woman targeted John and Cam in the first place. I was like, maybe it's like magicianal beef, like beef between their families that they don't know about. Maybe this is all about some like cabal of magicians and illusionists who have basically trying to rectify a lot of mistakes in the past. Like these are artifacts, these things, the stained glass or the watch are all connected to items that were stolen from well-known magician families or something, and they're trying to return them to the proper place. Maybe Mystery Woman and Bishop aren't actually working together. Maybe potentially they're rivals in this whole situation. Maybe they're all vying to a spot to be a part of this group. Maybe that's what this is all about. You know, maybe the coin that they got from their dad, that John kind of messes around with, maybe it's one of those things too. Maybe we'll find out it dates back to 1913. It could be like some crazy situation where it's like we had this guild of magicians who back in 1913, which was roughly around World War One, that could be the thing, because that would be around that time that these magicians stole something from families, and maybe these people, maybe MW comes from that family. Like I said, I felt like it had to have something to do with Cameron's family. So maybe it's a situation of they stole stuff that belonged to someone else. Like, so maybe even that coin doesn't belong to their dad. He got passed down during the generations, but actually it belonged to someone in MW's family, but it was stolen along with other stuff. And so that's why Bishop is helping potentially. Like I said, it's hard to say whether they're exactly allies or whether they're competition. I feel like the fact is that her eyes are there drawn are kind of like, no, it's most likely admiration, because he looks up to, maybe she's the leader of this group, maybe she's putting this team together, maybe she's not a part of it, but the leader of this team, in fact. I don't know, that's like immediately where my brain is, because like that's kind of been my thought from the very beginning. It's like the only reason why she would do what she's doing is revenge. So but it seems like it is bigger than Cameron. It seems like Cameron and John are a small piece of this larger puzzle in this sense. So those are my immediate thoughts about it. So ultimately we'll kind of have to wait to see if that ends up being the case or not, if any of that. It seems like, I think it's a little bit of all of that. Like, you know, some stuff might not be 100% accurate, but amongst my thoughts in that sense, I do feel like there's a little bit of the plot kind of pulled from all of that. So like I said, we will have to wait and see. Another interesting development from this episode was the whole Dina visiting John, because we end up finding out that, because no one else knew about John's, like, helping that prisoner escape until Kay came to him, because even, Cam didn't say anything to anybody. The only person who really brought up any questions was Dina. I guess because the others just kind of like, oh, they just kind of left it at that. Maybe they just felt like it was kind of no need to really push too much further, so they didn't really feel the need to say anything. But Dina does, because she cares about John. In fact, it seems like there was history between them, apparently not good history, because whatever John did, Cam is aware of. And he's like, yeah, it's kind of hard to forgive after what John did. He broke your heart and everything. Because that's the main reason why Dina hasn't visited him at all. So the question then becomes, what did John do? Did John break her heart? Did he cheat on her or something like that? Part of me also wonders, could it be like about their whole situation of like the whole team? Like he walked away from the team and her. Like John didn't want to be caught up in that whole magic life. Obviously, maybe it was kind of like an ultimatum type of situation where John was kind of like, come with me. But Dina was like, I don't want to leave this all behind. This is like where my heart, my passion is. But it wasn't there for John anymore because he grew up in magic. And obviously like he looks at it very differently than Cameron does. So maybe it just kind of like, it didn't resonate with him anymore. And so he walked away from it and ended up leaving Dina. Maybe that's what that is. But I don't know. I feel like it'd be something a lot more personal than that. But, you know, that could be potentially the case. But like I said, that's something we'll have to wait and see. But it was surprising when she did go visit John, because basically she wants to understand like what's going on with John, because she's like, I know what's up with you, that something is more to this, because obviously they kind of make the comparisons, and it's something that shows done a very good job of making. Like obviously Cam being the very optimistic one, which obviously you even have like John being very snarky about it, which is kind of like, yeah, my brother's just got rose-tinted glasses on, covered in honey. I was like, yeah, he's super optimistic and just wants to see the world the way he wants to see it, not really how it is, which, you know, John's very pessimistic. It's kind of like, yeah, I know how things really are. I know how the game is played, essentially. Basically saying he doesn't want to do what he's doing, like, but in this situation, you have to do what you have to survive. It's either kind of go with the flow or you fight like tooth and nail to kind of survive. So I was actually surprised, because I was thinking like when Dina touched his hand, like obviously it's just kind of a moment of like, oh yeah, let's build, like, okay, we kind of building back up whatever between them. But I thought at the same time, I was like, is she secretly handing him something? But it doesn't seem like it was the case. So. But it seems like the Winslow situation in John's case does seem like it continues, because Winslow's like, hey, I'm going to offer you again a chance to work with me. But for John, it's like, I can't do that because my brother and everyone else is doing the best that they can to try and free me. And I can't jeopardize that, especially because he does want to get out of there as soon as possible. So the last thing he wants to do is cause more problems and end up not being able to get released whenever this whole MW situation gets, comes to a head and he finally does, get released. He doesn't want to take any chances he might ruin that for him. But Winslow, basically, the fact is the guy had a candy bar. It seems like that was a sign of like, oh yeah, like, this is me giving you something, now do something for me in return. The fact is the guy had a candy bar and he even says it himself. So because the way Winslow was kind of making it seem like, oh, if you don't have me, people are going to come after you. So I thought it was going to be like other people that's like, oh, you're fresh me, I'm going to come after you. But I was like, no, Winslow went out of his way to offer the money to that, or offer something to that guy to be like, okay, I'll cut you in on some stuff if you take this guy out. Obviously, like I brought up earlier, John and Cam kicked ass. So John knocked this dude out, took the candy bar. So obviously, the situation with Winslow is not done. Obviously, it's going to get a lot more complicated. I mean, John probably doesn't really know the ramifications of what he's done, because obviously it just seems like, oh, he just he helped one guy escape prison, so it's not that big of a deal. But it's like, we don't know what the ramifications for that will be, the domino effects, because that guy could be potentially on the outside doing some dirty work for Winslow. And obviously Kay's got her suspicions about it being John, but obviously Cam's kind of like, no, it's not John, even though he knows, and even Dina knows that it in fact was John. They didn't even have to ask him, they knew. So the question is, like, what's going to happen with that whole situation? What was the point of getting him out? Maybe Winslow said in the previous episode, but I don't remember what it was exactly, if he said anything at all. Overall, some very interesting developments in this episode. I'm very interested to see whether anything, like I said earlier, kind of comes true or not. I'm very interested to find out what this whole MW situation ends up being about. Sadly, there will not be an episode next week. However, there will be one the week after next. So do keep that in mind. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good